day today? Wonderful. I love to be in a part of the country where I get to break out my flannel. I only have a few of them, and I don't get to wear them much at home. And so, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to wear them here. And this is how I would live every day, like James Wiley, a lumberjack, just wearing this every day. And so we just can't do it when you live on the face of the sun. You have to wear things that are a lot lighter. All right, Romans chapter 12 tonight. Romans chapter 12. We are knocking down the grace gifts. How many of you at this point think that you may have the gift of prophecy? Is there anyone that thinks you may be a gift of prophecy? Nobody. All right. How about the gift of ministry? All right, there's a few hands. How about the gift of teaching? Okay, there's a few more. I didn't find that gift in here. How about exhortation? All right, there's a couple. All right, very good. Okay, all right, tonight we will be on giving and ruling. Those are going to be the two we'll do. We'll do giving first, then we'll have a break and we'll do ruling. And let's remind ourselves where we are in the passage. Romans chapter 12, let's read beginning in verse 1. I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. For I say, through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, according as God hath dealt to every man the measure of faith. For as we have many members in one body, and all members have not the same office, so we, being many, are one body in Christ, and every one members one of another. Having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, whether prophecy, let us prophesy according to the proportion of faith, or ministry, let us wait on our ministering, or he that teacheth, on teaching, or he that exhorteth, on exhortation. He that giveth, let him do it with simplicity. He that ruleth, with diligence. He that showeth mercy, with cheerfulness. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity we have tonight to be here in this place as we learn and are doing our best to discover the gift in which you've given to us by grace. Help us to be able to identify it clearly and help us to learn to employ it for the benefit and unity of the body of Christ. In Jesus' name, amen. Why are they important? It's important because it benefits you overall for your spiritual health and maturity. We've been covering these each time with each gift. It promotes unity within the church. It is an example and teaches the next generation how to function. So a church has function. It's not just form, it's also function. And there's a reason why these gifts were given. They are to be enacted among the body. It also helps us to function efficiently. We don't want to just be here. We want to be here at our best. And so that's an efficient way in which we function. And then, of course, we want to please the Lord and be obedient. And we want to be good stewards of what God has given to us. When you're given something, then you have a responsibility to care for it. And the Lord has done that for us. There's your 7 gifts. We've gone over them. Tonight we'll be talking about giving and ruling and what they mean. Giver. If you are a giver, here's how we define that. The ability to give freely of what God has entrusted to them. This includes giving time, material goods, financial resources, with joy and eagerness, and without any ulterior motives that would benefit the giver. That first word in your blank there, entrusted. the ability to give freely of what God has entrusted to you. The giver understands, and all believers should understand, givers should understand that what God has given to you, what financially in your treasure, goods, He's entrusting us with it. It's His. It's all His. The job I have is because He gives it to me. The money I have is because it's His, and He allows me to be a steward of it. And I get to enjoy the things I do through what He gives to me. He has entrusted me with all I have, and a giver understands that. And then they're very eager. With joy and eagerness, they cannot wait to benefit. Not for themselves, but see the benefit of God's blessings in someone else's life. God has been very generous to me in many ways. He has met my needs more than I could possibly have time to share with you tonight. And many times, those blessings have come by someone who was gifted as a giver and saw a need, and God put it in their heart, and they were eager and joyful to give benefit to me and to my family with no strings attached, no ulterior motives, just so that they could be obedient in what God had gifted them to do. Here's a purpose of a giver. God's grace gift of giver to the church is for the purpose of supplying the want of the saints by liberal distribution from those who find joy in giving to and meeting a need. Every man according as he purposeth in his heart, so let him give. As God purposes in your heart to give, you are the person who is willing and eager to be obedient in that, and you are liberal with your distribution. That doesn't have to mean large sums. Liberal does not necessarily mean large sums. It is that it is freely your spirit to help someone else. Here's a list of characteristics. If you are a giver, you'll find that you are willing to give as led by the Spirit. You are willing to give as led by the Spirit. You're not necessarily just walking around throwing away all your resources as a giver. You believe deep in your heart that God has led you by His Spirit to give to an individual who has a need. And so your giving is usually led by the Spirit. And that's an important characteristic to a giver because it keeps things in order for you. Freely and happily gives. You find the most joy. Whereas someone with ministry finds their joy in serving, you find joy in giving. You are very much the person that says giving is always better than receiving. You find joy and you freely give. There's no hesitation. When the Spirit has led you to give, you give all you can, sometimes till it hurts. Often gives anonymously. You're not looking for credit. That's not why you do it. You're not looking for status. You're not looking for favor. You're not looking for anything in return. You're giving because that's the Spirit you've been given. You're giving because that's how God has gifted you. And getting a thank you in return is not important to you. It's not something you seek after. Understands that giving is an intricate part of serving. It is how you serve. For someone with ministry, as we've talked about, you're willing to do anything at any time. Physical labor, not physical labor. It makes no difference to you. But for you, you find that the way to serve is by giving. Giving of your time, giving of yourself, giving of your financial or monetary resources. It is giving your assets, what you have, and employing that in a way that it absolutely benefits. Because for you, you've seen God return it to you. We do not believe in a prosperity gospel, but there's a lot of ways God returns generosity for those that are gifted givers. Takes pleasure in meeting the needs of others. You're normally giving because you know there's a need. That's just how it goes. I had a man one time that saw that my family had one vehicle. And we had a few children at that point, and Jody stayed home, and I worked a lot, so she stayed home without a vehicle because I had to take what we had to work, and God just put it on his heart. He is a gifted giver. And so he came to me at one point, this is years into the ministry, and he said, would it help you if you had a truck? I said, man, it would greatly help me if I had one. And he said, well, I've got, at my shop, he owned a business, he said, at my lot at work, I've got like 4 trucks that just sit there. They hadn't moved in years. He said, they might even need some work. I don't know. But if you want one of them, I'll give that to you. I'll have it gone through, make sure everything's good. And then you can just, he said, you can just pick one of the 4 out. Makes no difference to me which one you take. I mean, it was a blessing. It was a simple work truck. I think it was a GMC. It had a single cab, long bed, just a 2-wheel drive, and it was reliable. And man, was I thankful for it. And he saw a need. I wasn't asking, I wasn't shopping, nothing had been said by my pastor from the pulpit. It was just he saw my family living with one vehicle and thought what he had would be a blessing to me. And you don't just give for the sheer effort of giving. You're always trying. Your pleasure is found in meeting a direct need that you know someone has. Gives not only quantity but quality. Not only quantity but quality. This is important sometimes in the church. You're not going to hear this from your own pastor probably. I don't even know if this is how he feels. But since this isn't my church, I'm going to take an opportunity to share without hopefully hurting anyone, okay? But listen, it's one thing to give in quantity. It's another thing to give in quality. Now, I didn't say this. This doesn't come from me. I know it's true. It's not one of those preacher illustrations that no one knows if anyone ever said it. I know this to be true. Okay? This man gave something to the church one time, and he started the giving with, we bought something new, and so we thought what we had could benefit the church. And the response from the preacher was, well, why don't we get the new one? Now, I'm not advocating that. But what he was trying to express is what you give should have as much quality as it does quantity. And so if you want to give your best. If you want to give something that not only meets a number, but also meets a real, genuine need. I told this story to your pastor the other day, and I hope it doesn't come across as ungrateful, because I wasn't. I was extremely grateful for it. But in our farmhouse where I planted a church in Iowa, our heating source for the winter was a wood-burning stove in the basement and a fuel oil stove furnace in the basement. I didn't know that much about fuel oil. It made me a little bit nervous, and so we chose to spend the first winter preparing to burn wood. That's a whole story in and of itself, but I'll summarize it with this. I was not prepared. I thought I was, but by Thanksgiving, I was in trouble. So I spent $800 to fill up the fuel oil tank and thought, well, I didn't really want to do this, but at least we're good for the winter. By Christmas, that was gone. And in Iowa, that's when it really starts getting cold. So then I spent the rest of the winter every day after work chopping wood, or cutting and splitting wood, so I could have heat for my family. I said all that to say this. Years into that, this man calls me from Indiana, and he says, hey, listen, I have a corn furnace. Anybody have any experience with a corn furnace? So it literally burns corn, kernel corn, and you supplement about 10% wood pellet in it. And it was real fancy. It looked like a big wood-burning stove, had a hopper in the top. You could put a bunch, like gallons of corn in it, and it would slowly funnel in and burn and heat your house. And I thought, man, this is great. I won't have to split another piece of wood ever. I had a horse that my kids stopped riding, and so I became a literal horse trader. I called my neighbor who were row crop farmers. I said, when you start harvesting, would you like to have Susie, that was our horse, a horse, not my daughter, not anything weird. Susie was our horse. And they like to barrel race and all of that. I said, would you like to have Susie and I'll trade you for a wagon of corn. And they're like, man, that's done deal. Let's do that. And so I traded my horse, got a wagon of corn. I thought, man, I can go 3 winters on this much corn. This is amazing. Listen, I was about a month into having that corn furnace, and I was about to have to go to the insane asylum because I could not get through one night without that thing getting clogged. And I'd have to get up in the middle of the night. It was way worse than burning wood. I'd have to get up in the middle of the night and go down there, and I'd have to take pry bars and hammers, and I'd be beating on it. And Jody thought I was down there destroying the basement. And so I said all that to say, listen, quality matters. It should have dawned on me that this man that called me from Indiana and said, hey, I'll give you this free computerized corn furnace, and I'll drive it to your house, and I'll install it in your basement, and I'm going to go back to Indiana, and it won't cost you anything. I should have known that was a problem. That's how he got his sanity back. He brought it to my house. I'm just kidding. Listen, it should be quality and not quantity all the time. Sometimes quantity is what's needed, but quality is what's appreciated. It gives to bless and enhance ministries. It may be personal for you, and that's fine, but you're wanting to bless and enhance the ministry overall. And so that's your heart. That's a characteristic of someone who's a giver, is that you want it to promote the church. Sees hospitality as a chance to give. You have a family over for dinner, or you go to dinner with a family, and then you get to know them a little more, and they start sharing their life story or their family situation, and you're intuitive, you're being led by the Spirit, and this is hospitality is a chance to give. And so maybe it's that you just buy the dinner, or maybe that it's that you meet the need of that was shared at the meal, or that just simply having someone over is your chance to give back to someone. Hospitality is one of the many ways in which you can give. You're financially wise. That's a characteristic of yours. You're financially wise. You're not necessarily, frugal may be the word of the day for that. You're not a spender. You're not necessarily a saver. You just know that you're a funnel for God's resources. And as it comes in, you're sending it back out. But you're wise with every penny that you have. Strongly believes in tithes and offerings. I don't know where you're at on that. I know when Jody and I first got saved, we had children, we'd been married, we were struggling like every young married couple. Broke is a relative term, but we had less than we thought, and I started to grow as a Christian, and I heard my pastor talk about tithing and what it was, and I thought, how am I ever going to do that? I can't hardly pay my bills now. And I tell everybody, I tell my church this, I tell this anywhere I go, 30 years into being saved, 26 years into being in the ministry, looking back, here's what I say now. I don't know how I didn't. I don't know how I got by without tithing. It's a tough transition to make initially. But once you begin to get faithful in tithes and offerings, if you're a giver, you believe strongly in it because you understand it's part of the financial stewardship and how God designed it. And I know my blessings come directly from my faithfulness. And again, that sounds like prosperity gospel. I'm not saying that. Anything I have is because God has given it to me. And the more that I have been obedient, the more I see the truth in that. Understands that God owns everything. He does. If you have a home, He's the one that owns it. If you have a job, He's the one that has it. If you have anything, it's because God owns everything. It's not just the cattle. It's not just the hills. Everyone likes to make that claim. God owns all that, but He also owns what you have. And a person who is a giver understands that. Strong business skills. I meet folks like this often. But you have a skill. You can turn $1 into 10 and 10 into 1,000. You have skills in order to be able to do that. Strong business skills is part of your characteristic. Appreciates a value. Okay? Appreciates a value, a real value. My wife says, well, this is on sale. It's going to save us money. Not that kind of value, but real value, okay? You appreciate what something is worth, is not gullible. You're not easily swayed. Listen, I would never, ever share with you a name. But we had a lady in a church that I pastored one time, and she needed help. She's elderly. She's on her own. She really had no family to help her per se. And, it was, if she missed church, it was likely she missed church because she didn't have any gas money to put in her vehicle. And so we would help her. She wasn't technically a widow, but she just was on her own. And so we would help her. And at first, when I was a younger pastor, maybe not as savvy as I hope that I am now, we would just give her cash. Like each week we'd say, hey, listen, we just want to help you. She never asked for it. Sometimes she definitely turned it down. But I found out that as I was giving her cash to help her, before she got home, she would run into a needy soul that she gave it all away to. She had a giver's gift, but she didn't have anything to give. And then when she did, she gave it all away. So then instead of giving her gas money, I just put gas in her car. It was easier for her to get what she needed that way. And so I'm not claiming she was completely gullible, but I'd say, I almost said her name. I'd say, Miss So-and-so, I thought we gave you money for that. She said, well, I met this lady on the way home at McDonald's, and she had 5 kids that didn't have any food. And that may be true, and everybody needs help. But you've got a giver understands they're reading through what's going on in any given situation. And when they have a need and they meet that need, they can't help but do it. They can't help but give, even if it means they have nothing left in return. So you're not gullible. You can see something for what it is, and you know that there's a truth involved. Here's your challenges. And by the way, I probably should have said this much earlier in the week. When I say challenges, many of these challenges are a negative. But every good thing comes with a negative if you're not careful. I'm not claiming these negatives as characteristics. These are your challenges. If you are not careful with your characteristics, then they become a negative. They are a challenge to you, and everyone has that. Every gift has that. Every personality has that. There's things that we need to make sure that we avoid, and giver is no different. You tend to be controlling with your money. Listen, the opposite of generosity is controlling. And so a giver is someone that, although you very much can be led by the Spirit to give in any quality need to an individual, you also have a tendency, if not careful, to want to control how that all happens, how that all works. You pressure others to be more generous. Because you're generous, you should expect everyone to be generous. And that's not necessarily how that works. And so you have a challenge that on occasion you tend to come across as someone who pressures others to be more generous. You may overcommit. If you're not careful, and you're just divvying out your blessings, you may outpace yourself. You may overcommit to something, or you anticipate, well, I've got this coming, and so I'm going to give this now, and then that thing that was coming doesn't come, and now you're overcommitted. And so that's a challenge for you if you're a giver. You may overcommit. You use financial giving as a way out of other requirements. All right, I think the best example I can give here is the work of missions. People think, well, I give Faith Promise, so I don't have to do missions. You do have to do missions. You say, but I'm not a missionary. But you're saved. The Great Commission is not just to those who do the work of an evangelist. Those who are saved have a Great Commission in which we freely express every missions conference is a missions command. And so if we know the Lord, then we must do the work of missions. That's how we, listen, you can't just give and get out of a requirement. You can't say, well, I don't want to give out a tract, but I'll buy them. You got to give out the tract too. I don't want to do this, but I'll buy it. I don't want to do that, but I'll give the money for it. I'll give this for it, or I'll swap a resource for it. You would have a tendency to feel that way at times. And then you lead others to guilt trips or believes that they're entitled to something in return. That can become a challenge for those who give. You don't want the credit, but then deep down, if you let your flesh have control, you'll begin to start thinking, well, really I should be the head of the line at the dinner on the grounds on Sunday because, I gave the most. I'm not saying that's ever happened. I just don't have a better example, okay? So, you lead others to, or you believe that you have some sort of entitled position, that you deserve to know more than others, or that you should be treated differently than others because you give more. I don't know what your pastor does here. I'll tell you what I do. I have no problems with that. Brother Wiley, I have no idea what he does. I don't know what our folks give individually. I get monthly reports, I get quarterly reports, I get annual reports, and I see numbers. That's all I see. I don't see names, I just see numbers. Now, is it part of my responsibility to know who gives what? Yes, but I don't want to know. I don't want to know because I'm not going to treat this person any different than I'm going to treat that person, and I don't want to fall into a challenge where I think someone deserves more than someone else because I saw what they gave. I just heard someone say recently, a man that was visiting our church, and I sat down with him at a meal and talked to him about, just church in general, and he wasn't necessarily asking to join our church, but he was just talking about church membership, and he was communicating how he got upset at the last church he was at because he gave a significant amount of money to missions, and he told me the number, and it was significant, and he said, and wouldn't you know, they didn't even send me a thank you note. And that's why he left the church, because he didn't get a thank you for the missions money he gave to missions. Listen, you are not entitled to anything special. If you give in the offering every week, we're not sending out thank you letters every week. You didn't give it to us anyway. If I said thank you, I'd be taking credit for something that I shouldn't be taking credit for. You gave that money to God. And so this is the challenges of a giver, and it can be difficult. Uses for a giver. How do you use a giver in a church? Well, they'd be great as an overseer of a fundraising effort. I don't know if you do that in your churches. We do one fundraiser every year. It's for teen camp, but you may do more, and that would be fine. Or it could be a building project that you need someone to oversee, an effort, a financial effort, or a fundraising effort for. Listen, if you're a giver, you have strong business skills. You have. It just so happens that one of my gifted givers in my church also happens to be my chair deacon, and he also happens to be the head treasurer. And so, and what he does for a living is he's an executive vice president of finance over a massive Fortune 500 company. I mean, when he goes to work every day, his responsibility is to oversee, with a B, billions of dollars funneling in and out through the business. And so he's got a great mind for it. And most givers do. And so the oversight of a fundraising effort would be a great way to use a giver. Individual financial counseling. I'm responsible to do all of the counseling at our church. But if I knew someone had a lot better information than I had, I would say, listen, you need to talk with brother so-and-so because he can help you. He could be a great financial counselor to how to get your home budget in order. That'd be a great benefit to the local body because everyone struggles and everyone could do better in this area. And so a financial counselor would be a great way. They could be a treasurer. They could be a financial counselor. Even just giving a pastor or the deacons or the treasurer some kind of wisdom about what to do. My treasurer came to me, and I don't think about these sorts of things, mostly because I'm ignorant to them. But he came to me a number of years ago and said, hey, listen, we built a building when I first got where I am, and we had a mortgage of about $750,000, and we had a cash amount of money set aside designated for the building that as a church we decided to hold on to until the end of the mortgage and drop one balloon payment at the end and be done with it. Shorten that note as much as we could. And so my treasurer, who is the executive vice president of finance for a big company, came to me and he said, Pastor, instead of just letting this money sit in a regular savings account, what if we prayed about putting it in a high interest CD? And the interest was very high at that time. And so I said, that'd be great. What's the return on that? And he tells me. And so we did it. 5-year term. We put it in a CD. We took all the interest. We dumped it on the principal of the loan. And this month, we were due to make our last mortgage payment. It's been 7 years since we built the building. 7 years, $750,000. We're not that big of a church. We're basically maybe just a little bit bigger than you guys. And our folks are faithful. And so we were going to make our last mortgage payment this month, and my treasurer came to me and he said, Pastor, we might have an issue. I said, uh-oh, I hate to hear that. What's our issue? He said, we're 3 years ahead of our mortgage payoff. He said, the note for the CD is not up yet. And he said, we didn't anticipate being this early. And he said, the penalties are outrageous. He said, if we cash out that CD now, it's going to cost us $8,000. I said, well, what's the other thing? I mean, we didn't have to pay it off. We just wanted to. I said, what's our options? He said, well, if we wait 6 months and pay it off in April of next year, he said, not only will we not lose $8,000, he said, I can structure it in a way that we'll gain $3,000. I said, that's what I want to do. So, listen, I wouldn't have known all that. I couldn't have known all those numbers, but someone who's a giver does, someone who understands finances can, and so they can be a great counselor. Care ministry is another way, just because they have a heart to want to meet needs for someone. And then general oversight of any project. You know, anyone that's just got some walking around sense and common sense can do these kinds of things, and a giver is certainly one of them. So, how should I give? Every gift in Romans 12 gives us a way in which we are supposed to do that gift. He that giveth, let him do it with simplicity. Aren't you thankful when things are just simple? Can I paraphrase that? What I got to get a little attitude. That's the perfect word. I'm not changing the Bible. But giving simply means you're not tying any strings to it. You just say, hey, here it is. Enjoy it. I love you. God, here it is. Church, here it is. Pastor, here it is. Brother, here it is. Give it and let it go. Do it simply. Move along. That's how you're supposed to give. Give and let Him do it with simplicity, because it makes everything easier. There's no expectation of anything in return. So here's a review on the giver. The giver is one who has the ability to give freely of what God has entrusted to them. This includes giving time, material goods, financial resources, and you do it with joy and eagerness and without any ulterior motive that would benefit the giver. You're not investing into the tithe or the offering or the church or a project because you can't wait to get a return. Now, there's ways that your church can use this kind of philosophy and benefit other things. When I planted the church in Iowa, there was a church about 2 hours east of us that heard about us planting a church in the state. And I didn't know this, but in their missions program, they had been stockpiling finances to specifically help churches get started in their own state. And that money could be used any way that it helped the church plant. And so the pastor came over to one of our services one time. I didn't know him. I preached. I got done with the service. I saw that he was there. He came in late, so I didn't have a chance to meet him. After the service, I introduced myself. He introduced himself. And he asked if he could talk with me. And so we talked, and he said, I've been watching the church plan, and I've been hearing about how things are going. And he said, I'm here to offer to you an opportunity financially to your church. I don't know if you need it. I don't know if you don't need it. But I felt like the Lord wanted us to help you. And so he expresses that they have a certain amount of money in their missions, and we could borrow all of it or any amount of it that we wanted to help our church plant with no strings attached, except that it be on a 10-year note, no interest. That we had 10 years to pay every dollar back. Now, he didn't know this. This is how the Lord works. We had bought our first building. We were still renting a high school auditorium, but we had bought our first building. We had just enough money. Matter of fact, we didn't even buy it outright. We had just enough money to secure the deal and make the payments every month to have our own place. But it had sat empty for years. It needed a lot of work. And so I had someone come in and give me an estimate on the remodel, and it was $30,000. That was the estimate, $30,000. So when Pastor Miller was talking to me, I said, if you don't mind me asking, how much money are you saying is available? And he said, well, $30,000. I said, what? He said, $30,000. He said, you can borrow $500, you can borrow $5,000, or you can borrow the whole 30, as long as it's paid back in the first 10 years. I said, Pastor, you would not have known this, but our church has been praying for 6 weeks that we would figure out how to get a $30,000 loan and not be in some kind of incredible debt. And so we did it. We remodeled the building, and all the things were great. I'm sharing that because what I'm saying is there were no ulterior motives. They didn't want anything in return. They were just wanting to help. And that's exactly what a giver's heart is. They just want to help. They want to help the ministry. They want to help saved folks. They want to help anybody they can. And they're going to be as generous and as quality driven and with all the things as they can possibly do. These are your characteristics.